Hello everyone, I'm Virginie Mamet and I'm really pleased to be here today to share with you some of my research about Tapta textile integration in space. When she was a teacher in La Cambre in Brussels, Tapta said that what was really important to her was the perception of the body and the perception of the space. She also said that she has always been interested in space and in the way we can contribute to this space. And with her textile, she estimated that she created a new dynamic in the space by adding something supple, something flexible in the space. She also remembered her childhood and the factory of her father. She was fascinated by the buildings, by the architecture of these gigantic spaces. She also remembered her time in Congo, where she was fascinated by the nature and the monumental aspect of this nature. From the 70s, when Tapta created textile sculptures, she progressively went to textile environments. Her different sculptures were arranged as coherent environments, and she described this as soft spaces. For example, in 1973 in Ghent, she arranged different sculptures as a chatting tent, but also as suspended chairs or different cocoons as really coherent environment. And that was the very beginning of the subtle soft space. And in 1974, 1 year later, she also presented her very gigantic piece, Shapes for a Soft Space. She presented it in Bruges for the first time for a triennale for contemporary art. And this piece was itself an environment, a space in which the visitors can go in, and that was an environment itself. From this year too, so 1974, Tapta also began to create a new type of work, the flexible horizon. She described it as various type of cylinders that were wrapped and tied together by different types of wools, and these forms could be modified, arranged by the visitors themselves. So there were as many possibilities as visitors. These new modular panels were very playful, but they were also an almost architectural element of structuration, an element really integrated in architecture and in the space. This relation between textile and architecture also very interested Gottfried Semper, the famous architect of the end of the 19th century. And he really saw the textile as one of the fundamental elements of architecture and in its role of enclosure, of division. The famous textile designer Annie Albers also wrote about this subject. In 1957, she wrote The Pliable Plane, Textile in Architecture. And she also insisted on the flexible properties of textile, um, its transportable aspects, as we can understand, mobile, but also wearable. And she made a connection between clothes and textile and their role of protection. Tapta also wrote about this subject. She wrote an article, Soft Sculpture, Textile in Architectural Space. And in this article, Tapta insisted on the fact that her work was really designed to encourage touch and daily use. Tapta also remarked that everything around us and on us is textile. She compares textile to a second skin, something that protects us. The artist was interested in matters of architecture and interior design. We knew that through her career, she was commissioned different pieces for personal interiors. And these hybrids objects were really between visual arts, design, but also craft. We knew that she created different shawls that were made to really be worn. She also was commissioned different headboards for some bedrooms, also some panels or some chairs. Some of these hybrid objects were even commissioned by architects themselves. We knew, for example, that the Belgian architect Roger Bastin commissioned her a braided ochre wall to embellish the lobby of one of his hotels in Namur. We also knew that the Belgian architect Claude Guelen also commissioned her a flexible horizon for one of his buildings. And we also knew that the Belgian architect Simon Gillissen-Oa also has different objects of Tapta in her personal home. She had a shawl, but she also had a shell chair that Tapta had made for her. Photographs reveal that Tapta had a very similar view of her own home. We can see in her home in Avenue Jacques Pasteur in Uccle, Brussels, that there were some suspended chairs, but also shell chairs around the coffee table, or even flexible horizon in her saloon. Tapta really had a vision that mixed art and life. They were melt with each other, and that was very important to her. In the late 70s, in addition to these private commissions, the question of public commissions became more and more relevant for Tapta. She really wanted to integrate her work in public spaces, but also in public buildings. She said that this type of project fascinated her because it allowed her to have an impact on the architectural space and to leave the space of the museum and become a part of the city's everyday life. The goal was to have an impact on life. One of our first public projects were two textile structures for the cafeteria section of the former boating center of Buchenbach, which was later converted into a water sports center, and Tapta proposed for it chromatic tension in 1979. Which consisted of two woolen rope installation. A new element popped up in her work at this time, the idea of tension. At the end of her time with Textile, Tapta said that she felt the need to create tension across the space, something that was no longer soft. She insisted on the fact that tension is a matter of geometry in space, a matter of lines of force. Enormous structures were made of pure wool ropes of different colors, and the rope was stretched in the space and cross each other's. Tapta explained that for that project, she really wanted to be connected with the aim of the former building, the former navigation center. So she wanted to be in connection with this navigation world. She wanted her structures to be simple, to be functional, and not only decorative. She wanted to create a new dynamic of the space. She wanted to invite the visitors to see this building in a new way, but connected with the navigation world. At that same time, Tapta began to work on a concept for structures for a Brussels metro station, even if the work was inaugurated many years later in 1985. Her experience in Buchenbach allowed her to contemplate a new, compelling solution. This time, there were metallic cables that would be stretched across the space and that would serve both a decorative and a functional purpose. Once again, that was the work's destination that would be treated as the main focus. And the metro station is mainly about passages, about transition, and that was precisely on that Tapta insisted. She stretched 12,000 meters of stainless steel cable across the space, and it was materialized into 4 structures with a very dynamic movement. About the tensions, despite the fact that this was not specifically a public commission, it's interesting to mention Tapta's intervention in Aix-en-Provence in 1982. For this project, the Tapestry Museum gave her carte blanche to occupy the very large place of a neoclassic chapel and also an old palace and its sacristy. The space was entirely white with very large columns, and Tapta stretched 2 kilometers of acrylic rope through the space. The installation started out on the floor level with ropes in a shades of gray to match the surroundings, and then the ropes spread out across the space, coiling themselves around the columns before falling back down toward the floor in the opposite direction of the chapels. Also, 5 models of the project were exhibited in the sacristy. In addition to her tension, Tapta continued to imagine, to conceive projects for public spaces with the same approach of flexibility. In 1982, so the same year of Aix-en-Provence, the Belgian Ministry of Public Works allocated a budget for the purchase of works designed for the state's administrative center. And a consultative committee for industrialized and a consultative committee for industrial arts and design was set up for the occasion. Its role was to oversee the integration of art in this public building. 2 mural textiles were commissioned from Tapta. They were meant for the lobby of the finance tower, and the interior design was being overseen by Stefan Jasinski. The interior architect Stefan Jasinski opted for furniture and quality materials. The interior architect Stefan Jasinski opted for very high quality materials and furniture. For example, French oak coffee tables, Soninian granite floors, calfskin armchair, and all of this in the very artisanal grandeur in the 60s period. In 1982, so the same year of Aix-en-Provence, the Belgian Ministry of Public Works allocated a budget for the purchase of works designed for the state's administrative center, and the Consultative Committee for Industrial Arts and Design was set up for the occasion. Its role was to oversee the integration of art in this public building. 2 mural textiles were commissioned from Tapta. They were meant for the lobby of the finance tower, and the interior design was being overseen by Stefan Jasinski. The interior architect Stefan Jasinski opted for very high quality materials and furniture. For example, French oak coffee tables, Soninian granite floors, calfskin armchair, and all of this in the very artisanal grandeur in the 60s period. Again, to remain coherent with the atmosphere, Tapta designed 2 monumental tulle and jute tapestries with the colors of the sailing, so shades of green, yellow, red, and brown that were the same as those of the suspended wood speakers of the ceiling. She chose rounded shapes reminiscent of her soft, organic, and vegetal works from the late 60s. So again, very consistent and coherent with the general atmosphere of the space. The state ended up selling the complex to private developers in 2003. And since the finance tower campaign took place from 2005 to 2008, and since then, her work is no longer visible and its location is unknown. Around the same time, Tapta designed an integration with totemic shapes that announce her future work with neoprene. In 1982, the Cultural Center of Tournai was inaugurated, and the architect was Simone Gillissen Oa. She commissioned several art pieces to integrate the building. Unfortunately, Tapta's interventions were destroyed in 2010 during the renovation of the building. And the only remaining traces that we have today are some oral accounts and some archival photographs. The pieces consisted of 2 textile frescoes that were directly passed into the walls of the 2 flights of stairs. On the lower level, the shapes were used to echo the rhythm of the steps, and the tones of ochre were made to resonate with the wooden banisters. All of these examples show the profound interest of Tapta for the notions of spaces, architecture, and all her effort to incorporate each specific space with an harmonious vision, with a coherent vision of the space. Her goal was really to impact people's everyday life, both in their private homes, but also in the public spaces. The upfront reflections of an architectural project or the collaboration with others, workers, professionals, were very important aspects of that type of project. From the 80s, Tapta also had the opportunity to create many outdoor installations, and that would be the whole subject of another lecture or of another article. But yes, she had the chance to really also integrate the outdoor spaces. Before conclusion, let's mention that Tapta signed in 1983 the Manifeste pour l'environnemental, or Environmental Manifesto. Manifesto touched on the right to enjoyment, the impact of environment on everyday life, but also on the poetization of the environment and the role of the artist in this poetization. The manifesto called for the artist to be integrated in the urbanistic project with the same role as engineer or architect, and that they really take part to the discussions and to the preliminary phases of an urbanistic project. These aspects demonstrate the really necessary cohabitation, the really need of an harmonious link between the poetic and the political, the decorative and the functional, the beautiful and the useful, the architecture and the visual and applied arts. And Tapta had really this vision of harmonious link between all these aspects. And that was my conclusion. Thank you very much.